We're taking a look at the 2023 Volvo V60 Cross Country B5 with all-wheel drive. Now, we've covered almost every single Volvo product at this point, but this is one of the very few wagons you can get in the United States, so it is a standout. So we're going to cover some of the stuff in the shop and mostly the interior. When you look at this car on the outside and just take a look at the overall proportions, it is classic. It has almost got this timeless look that's not going to age horribly. They don't do over-styling here, and I think that's a huge draw. It has a sense of elegance. When you get on the inside of the Ultimate package, which this is equipped with, leather top dash, you get more premium materials, you get ventilated seats, you get the 360 camera, and you, of course, you get something like the air purification system, which you can see on the infotainment. And while Volvo is very self-serious about all their features, I am not. Now, there are some other things that are added here that make this $63,000, which is crazy, but one is the Bowers & Wilkins system, which is $3,200, and that is expensive. I will tell you, we've tested all the Bowers systems in the Volvos, and objectively and subjectively, they are some of the best on the planet, regardless of price point. That's because they start with a very neutral base, so if you set this up to driver focus and you turn off all the DSP settings, it is as accurate as you can possibly get a car to sound without spending a cajillion dollars. And from there, you can really tweak the EQ to your liking. It is just amazing. If you love music, just option it. Now, there's other things like the wheel and tire package, which adds like $2,200. Don't do it. You know, try to keep the price under $60,000, and I think you're going to be happy here. The seats are amazing. They are a standout. Again, with the Ultimate package, you're getting the heated and cooling. You're not getting massage. The adjustability is great. And most of the core functions and the physical switches feel very high quality in here. Now, of course, there is piano black all over the place, much like all this generation of cars, and the infotainment has moved to Android Automotive, which is a mixed bag. The screen quality is definitely lagging behind in terms of like DPI and clarity and brightness, and the usability is quite convoluted. Even though they've tried to skin this to look like the old Volvo Sensus stuff, things just don't work as they should. Like my Android phone doesn't work properly or doesn't connect to Android Automotive all the time, and I've tried 3 different Android phones on this thing, and it's always the same like laggy connection, and you know, your maps are so shrunken down. So there are like pitfalls of the older technology they're trying to jam in here, but I think if you just leave it as is, you're gonna like it. I mean, there are some great things about this car, and like everything, there's pros and cons, but we're gonna head in the shop. We're gonna talk about some of the mechanical things that they've changed here. You ready to go cross country, Jack?
Damn straight I am. This is the V60 Cross Country, and because of reasons, this does not have the air ride that the media page talked about. This is still on SPA, which is their global platform, which is about 400 years old. It is double wishbone front, multi-link rear, and it has a single leaf spring in the back.
Yeah, it looks good. That was for packaging, by the way. There's not too many manufacturers that do that, but it enables them to have a lower load floor in the cargo hold area, among other things, in terms of complexity of design. But when you add air ride, it does add air springs, so it does get rid of that part of it. So it is a modular architecture that they can scale out. We've seen the boat-like XC90 all the way down to 60s. The big thing here is, the big change is their new mild hybrid setup, Jack. Tell me about it.
So 48 volt system, it's a 4-cylinder. I essentially view this as a holdover till Volvo can finally kill all of their internal combustion engines. It's fine, returns good fuel economy, it makes mid 200s in horsepower, and it goes through an 8-speed automatic, and this still has Volvo's standard all-wheel drive system, or at least standard to the V60 Cross Country. The one thing I will say about this is hopefully the B5 drivetrain is more reliable than their T8s and T6s and T5s of yesteryear. I know we haven't really talked about Mark's XC90, but that thing broke all the time, and I don't have the most faith in this, but...
Well, you're reducing complication here because it's not really a full-blown hybrid with a large battery pack and electric generators, and it doesn't have the plug-in aspect, it doesn't have the supercharger. This is just a straight 2-liter turbocharged unit with the 48 volt system with that integrated starter generator that, you know, for start stop and all that. That improves efficiency. So you should be better off with this in terms of also engine tuning. It should feel smoother than trying to, you know.
I would take this over the T8 any day.
Oh my God, yeah. Or even in my regard, the T6, I would rather have this. I think the less is more with this current generation Volvo. But I mean, they've done a great job with this body structure, even though it's older. You'll notice interior, exterior, it's held up very well, and it's still one of the safest platforms on the road. So if that's what you value, that's still here. That hasn't changed. So let's get this on the road, Jack, and see how it drives.
All right, let's do it. Back into Volvo, Mark. Is this one going to break down on us?
No.
4 cylinders, mild hybrid, reasonable trans tuning.
Let's talk about the 4-cylinder briefly before we get into the Volvo stuff. Okay, so we complain about this, and we just complained about it on the RX, how the 4-cylinder has this rattly-ass nature to it, doesn't sound or feel premium for the price, right? When you're paying $50,000 to $60,000, the last thing I want to hear is some shitty $20,000 sounding 4-cylinder. Volvo does a really good job at doing 2 things: reducing vibration and harshness. So from like a dead stop, if you sit at idle, Volvo does one of the best jobs on the 4-cylinders.
You can't feel anything.
You think the car's off. That's how good it is. And obviously with start-stop not going, the engine running, you feel very little, if nothing, vibration-wise. The sound of the engine as well, you don't hear the shitty turbo noise, you don't hear high-pitch noise, you don't hear rattliness from it. They've done a really good job isolating it out, and the trans tuning is also very smooth. It's one of the least offensive 4-cylinders, despite it not being the most
It just sounds
powerful.
like machinery in the background motivating a transportation pod.
Correct.
Because that's honestly what this thing is. It looks all right. It has a good audio system, actually a great audio system, really comfortable seats, and it's pretty quiet. But past that, any sort of driver inputs, the steering is beyond dead. It's not particularly direct. The brake and the throttle are reasonably well calibrated, and the transmission, you never feel, unless, like what I just did, you go full throttle and you can sort of feel the torque converter reshifts.
Yeah.
But past that, it is just a transportation pod.
Volvo did not spend any time with sharpness in trans tuning, drive modes, any of that stuff here. They do not care about. Like, that's the last thing they cared about here. So to me, I look at this as a pure like luxury appliance, and I want to say luxury loosely, but you're not going to be thinking about, oh, is it have a variable gear ratio steering rack? Is the trans tuning changing? What's the suspension doing? It always feels the same no matter what you do. And I like that level of consistency, because let's be honest, the person that is buying this is looking for the cleanliness, the kind of a clean aesthetic that this car and the driving experience delivers. That's why I personally like it, and I think it's a really good modern design without being cheesy.
I think the person who's buying a V60 cross country has an aversion to SUVs and wants to be slightly different, because Volvo, like Jag and Cadillac, have kind of become that outsider luxury brand. A lot of people don't buy these things for one reason or another. I think if you look at it objectively, and specifically the United States, you have almost no competitors. You have the A4 and the A6 and the E-Class. Past that, there's really nothing in that luxury space.
You know who would love this?
Who?
Is Subaru owners that are tired of Subaru, like wagons and Outbacks and all
And
that.
suddenly have money.
And then have money and don't want like a kind of that shitty shit box style interior space. This does almost all that same stuff that the Subarus do. It's not as off-roady, of course, but I like this style that they're trying to go for. But this architecture, and we talked about it in the shop, is vastly dated compared to what the Germans are doing. When you get into the Audi equivalents, like the A4, A6s, the wagons, the sedans, or even the BMWs, they have not figured out how to do suspension here. It's still got that like jounciness to it, and I know you have a leaf spring back end or a composite leaf spring design, so that hurts, but even their air ride is not good, as we found out in the XC90. They're always behind in ride quality.
I have a general aversion to Volvo, particularly after what you dealt with in the XC90, and I know you're going to do a video on it talking about that in the X7. But I think if you are not an American and you live, say, in the UK, where you can get a 3 Series wagon, there's no reason to buy this car. You're better off with a BMW, particularly if you can get a 6-cylinder. The B58, in every aspect, it gets good fuel economy, the trans tuning's better, it handles better. I don't think this is particularly all that soft. Like the A6 is more comfortable than this because it's got air ride.
It is hard, dude. I mean, like, you're talking about a smaller manufacturer compared to the Germans. They don't have the cycles of learning, so they are behind in many cases. But I think that they did it just good enough so the average driver, the person that really likes what Volvo's bringing to the table, because you got to remember safety and all that stuff, that they're really, really good at body structure-wise. You could get hit by something.
You get hit by a semi and probably be fine.
Right, so there's that element. If you don't care about the drivetrain stuff and you don't expect the pinnacle of handling and ride quality or the most advanced all-wheel drive system, that's another one. There's literally no settings for any of that. This is just you get in here and you drive it. There's nothing to dick with aside from the infotainment.
This is a transportation pod that gets in our our test loop 26 miles per gallon. It's quiet, it's comfortable, it's got great seats and a good audio system. If that's what you prioritize and you don't want to be an asshole in an Audi or a BMW, you buy this thing.
I'll give you that, dude. I'm not even going to argue it. I mean, it's true.
I win!
You won this one.
So with that, Mark, let's get into the final thoughts.
All right. Final thoughts on the cross country. I think we said it during the drive. I've said it during the interior. You're buying this because you're a certain type of person that likes a clean aesthetic, a more timeless aesthetic, and somebody that just wants no bullshit, essentially, because really that's what it is. You get in this and drive it and you're not really thinking about anything else once you get used to the electronic part of it. It's not the best riding, it doesn't have the best drivetrain, it doesn't have the best electronics, but it does have one of the best audio systems, it has one of the best seats, it has some of the best interior design. So like every car, there are literal trade-offs. Because this B5 has the lesser of the engine platforms with just a turbocharger, hopefully it'll be a bit more reliable as well. I'm going to leave it at that. We'll see you next video.